created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
And today, or this time, we are talking about. I was about to say the last creation of Maestro Verdi, but in fact, if you are aware, if you know the compositions by Maestro Giuseppe Verdi, you are already aware that there was another opera after the one we will be talking about today. Of course, the last composition by Maestro Verdi is Falstaff, but we are talking today about the previous opera he composed. Of course, we are talking about Otello. And what is there to talk about Otello? Well, there is lots to talk about Otello, from the musical and composition style by Maestro Verdi, from the great singers that have portrayed the characters in this very splendid opera. And of course, we can also talk about some anecdotes around this role. So, for me, and I have to share it with you, it's a very special moment because I have to again confess, I like to confess these kind of things. My love and appreciation for Otello came, if when compared to other, because the style for Il Trovatore, La Traviata, Rigoletto, our love for those operas can be very easily be understood because of the number of performances, of the number of recordings of those performances that one can now have access to. However, it is not the same case as for Otello. There are not as many recordings, there are not as many performances on stage, and the ones that one has access to are not always that good so that one could enjoy them. So, with that in mind, it was until maybe in the last 10 years that I think that I also had to mature myself in the understanding of opera so that I could really have a more deeper connection with this opera by Maestro Verdi. And before we go and have some conversation around the details of this opera, let's start with a couple of things that you people may be familiar with. Verdi liked to take stories or novels written by by writers or poets. And this is the time, and it is not the first time that Verdi takes Shakespeare as the basis of one of his operas. Of course, you can easily or very rapidly think of a couple of others, but before we talk about any other and deviate ourselves from the main topic, let's go back to Shakespeare and Otello, also known as El Moro di Venezia. Huh. I was telling you, not the last, but the second before last composition by Maestro Verdi. Verdi had already harvested a good number of successes. You also may be familiar with the fact that Verdi is one of the very few examples or the very few cases of composers who happen to die being rich, contrary to what happens to maybe the opposite case as it was with Mozart, who died very poor. It is the contrary to Maestro Verdi. He knew how to manage his career and success. Verdi had this way of talking to the soul of people, and this is based on that he was very successful by the time he decided to compose Otello. It is said, or there are some anecdotes that say that Otello was kept in secret and that very few people knew what he was working on, and that in fact the name Otello was never uttered by anyone close to that composition. It is said that they used to refer to Otello as the Chocolata, the chocolate opera. one has the right to believe if that may be true at some point. It's just, or is it just part of the story of what really happens? One of the to justify the name Chocolata is because I was telling you that Otello is the Moro di Venezia, and that means that he had a very dark skin. With that dark skin in his mind, it is justified that this opera was referred to as the Chocolata. So this was the very dear Chocolata for Maestro Verdi. And Verdi knew that Shakespeare also had this way of talking to the emotions of people, and that's what Verdi really liked about Shakespeare. So, taking that into account, of course, it is the same case now. You have a book, and when you see the movie that it is built around that book, there are some things that need to be changed because we are having a different way of expressing that art. That is the case for opera. Opera, of course, is a very different art when compared to writing and composition, when one can recreate all the characters, reread it if necessary, make a pause, assume or suspect or think what is going to happen next, but that is not the case as the opera. You are presented with a male character, a female character, and now you are somehow subject to what you are listening and understanding as the opera is developing throughout all the acts. With all that being said, we have to talk now about who is Otello. Otello is, at this point, when the opera is starting, when it is opening, Otello at this point is a very successful man. And you may also be aware that a man that is successful can easily attract bad feelings from others. We will talk a little more about this very bad guy that at the end will bring the ruin to Otello. Of course, we are talking about Iago. But at the very beginning, Otello is very successful. Otello, as the opera is starting, there is this demonstration of success as he arrives to his hometown, and we're talking about Chipre. And in that, in the by the sea, or yeah, close to the sea, by the pier of Chipre, where Otello is the new governor after a battle with the Turkish, he arrives, and there is this opening that many people like because it is very impressive. Now, before we talk a little more about that, we cannot consider it an aria, but the opening words by Otello. We have to tell that Otello, one of the reasons why Otello is not very often sung is because of the very demanding role this is for the tenor. This time we're talking about a tenor that has to have a very powerful voice. Many people consider it takes a dramatic tenor. Many people think it's more than a dramatic tenor in the Italian conception of the dramatic voice. It is closer to a held tenor that is in the German repertory, with not so many high notes, but with a very powerful center and low voice, with with a voice that it's almost like a canon. That's what it is usually said about the voice of Otello. And of course, in history, there's not been so many singers who can achieve that. Of course, there is, if there is a few, at least they are very famous for what they did. Of course, the first Otello was Francesco Tamagno with a huge, powerful voice. We also know about Mario del Monaco more recently in the 50th past century. Mario del Monaco was another very famous Otello, and of course Carlo Cosutta, also another Italian tenor. It has also been sung by Mr. John Vickers, not that strong as the previous ones, and it is also said that Enrico Caruso was in fact studying Otello when he died, so he was not successful in singing that role. More recently, you may also be aware that Placido Domingo sang it. Personally, and maybe at this point I will also get many enemies for what I am about to say. Personally, I do not like Placido Domingo very much. There are very few roles where I like him singing, and Otello, of course, is not one of the roles that I like for his voice. Of course, after having heard Maestro Tamaño, or having heard Mario del Monaco or Carlo Cosuta, even Ramon Binay. Ramon Binay was a Chilean singer who came to live to Mexico. Of course, Ramon Binay is also a very impressive tenor, a very impressive Otello. So when I compare Placido's results to these very famous singers, truth is that I do not really like it. But now, having said about the difficulties and the type of voice that it is Otello, many people know that the opera starts, I was telling you, with the arrival of this new governor, Otello himself, to the lands of Chipre, and he opens with words that go like esultate, l'orgoglio musulmano sepolto in mar, nostra del cielo gloria, dopo l'arme lo vinse l'uragano. But it is very easily said, and if you have the chance of at one day looking at, if you read music at one day, you have the opportunity at the score, you may notice that the highest note that it is written, it is an A, and so it may not seem too difficult to sing, but take into account one thing. Orchestration is heavy, there is a choir, and you're just opening the opera. And moreover than that, the voice of Otello has to be so powerful and impressive that people have to believe it is not like a small voice says because you're not singing to a child. It is not a lullaby. It is not a song of love as in Rodolfo's. It is not a complaint as in Cavarados's Tosca. It is you have to prove yourself. You have to open with that very huge voice. That of course this is beyond the reach of lyrical voices, and this powerful has to be like esultate l'orgoglio musulmano no sepolto in mar. Of course, you try to picture that in your mind with of course, a much powerful voice than what I just tried to do. So picture that man on the top of the stage singing that. The importance is not on the length of how much he takes that for long, but the power of l'orgoglio musulman. As the aria goes on, nostra del cielo gloria, dopo l'armio vinse l'uragano. By the way, l'uragano, that syllable is not a complete, so because people tend to believe that the tenor usually cannot adhere to a l'uragano, but it is called it is because it is not a complete written note. It is more if you look at the score, you may immediately notice that there is a shakatura there. So it goes, dopo l'armi lo vinse l'uragano, and there is this acclamation by the people for Otello. Evviva Otello, evviva, viva! And with this very brief part that takes even less than 2 minutes to be sung, if we were... at this point, maybe I should mention that one of the characteristics of the style of composition by Maestro Verdi in his later days is that he has been... I'm not sure if I should use the word evolving, but at least changing to his style. People like to say that it is closer to Wagner, Because also you know that one of the things that people is obsessed about is comparing composers or trying to prove a point or anything. And people who are Wagnerians themselves like to say that Verdi understood the geniosity of Wagner, and at the end of his career he composed in a way that was more closer to Wagner, in the sense that there is this leitmotif, that the main singers do not have arias, duets, and and all those traditions that Italian music and Verdi's style had in the previous years. Uh, it might be true at some point, but what I think is that one has to understand that Maestro Verdi evolved in the way he had to evolve himself. With that being said, this opening scene by Otello is not an aria because it is not to be a sung part as it could be in any other opera. It is just the way all the drama has to evolve as now he has presented himself. Now I think it is also time that we talk about the two other main characters in the opera, and it is the wife of Otello, Desdemona. Desdemona, sung by a lyrical soprano. One also has to take into account two things when one talks about the soprano. One is that she has to be a great actress, a great singer, and by a great actress, we need to take into account that, except for the first act, throughout the whole opera, Desdemona is abused both verbally and physically on stage. So she has to appear fragile to the eyes of the spectators, still very loving to Otello. One does not have to doubt any time throughout the whole opera that Desdemona really loves Otello. If one has to think, and I would like to talk a little more about that as when we approach to the end of the opera, many people think that Desdemona is somehow obsessed and has a toxic love to the man who starts treating her so very bad. Of course, that is one of the thoughts that one recently has around the role of Desdemona. I was telling you that not only she had to be a great actress, also to appear fragile and still believable in love for Otello, and she has to be a great singer. Uh, it has to be a consummate, mature soprano for two main reasons. One, remember that Otello is a huge, powerful voice. If you have a soprano with a smaller voice, nice but still small voice, to sing with Otello, nobody will be able to hear her. The power and the voice and the volume of Otello will not let her shine. So it has to be a great voice. Of course, there are also a number of sopranos, important sopranos. One of them, of course, being Renata Tebaldi, who liked to sing the role of Desdemona. Of course, you know that Tebaldi has a very powerful voice, nothing to be afraid of when she sang along with Carlo del Monaco. Of course, there are other very good sopranos who have sung it more recently, and not only she has to be a mature voice, I was telling you, also a powerful voice in some sense, but she also has to sing beautifully. The only light that shines throughout the whole opera is the voice of Desdemona. As Otello descends throughout the darkness of anger, of jealousy, of not being able to control himself, there is always this very beautiful voice of Desdemona reminding him, I still love you and I will love you till the last breath of my life. And it is at this point, I will not be providing many details around the, the plot or the libretto of this opera, but I would like to jump quickly to how this opera actually wraps up to the end of the first act. And we have what we call a duet of love. So it is of course a duet, but there are a couple of things that are very interesting to remark. And before I go into the remarks, I would like to mention, if you like and if you have appreciated the art of Maria Callas and Giuseppe Di Stefano, if you do, you already know that both Maria Callas and Di Stefano sang a good number of times, not only when they were in the top of their vocal capacities, but also by the end of their careers. And it is by the end of their careers that they, in fact, recorded this duet. Also, to remind you that in opera, we like to give the names of the arias and duets, or the terzettos, to with the starting phrase of that duet, or that terzetto, and it is the case that it is called the Già nella notte densa. It is called Già nella notte densa. If you if you have the chance, and if you go looking for that, there is a couple of places in YouTube where you can find a recording of those later days by Maria Callas and Giuseppe Di Stefano. You may at this point say, hey, they are at the decline of their careers, and it is true, but also you have to take into account that in this duet, Otello is not shouting out loud anything. Neither is Desdemona. It is in fact a very intimate duet. If you really have the chance of looking for that in the voices of Callas and Di Stefano, please do so, because both Di Stefano and Callas have a deep understanding of how things have to be said and sung, how phrasing takes into place, how la mesure and lo tempo play into this. That one, it's really worth those minutes listening to them. And so, going back to the duet that starts Già nella notte densa s'estingue ogni clamor. It is, this opening is somehow different to what happens with earlier Verdi, because Otello is like referring to what is happening now. It is dark, it is night, there is no one else there. It is only Desdemona, him, the night, and the moon. And by these quiet notes, he's sharing with us what Desdemona means to him. Già il mio cor fremevondo s'ammansa in questo amplesso e si risensa. Tuoni la guerra e si risavi il mondo, se dopo l'ira immensa vien questo amor. Nothing else matters now that he is with Desdemona, enjoying those minutes that are next that night. And Desdemona, replying also with words of love, says, Mio superbo guerrier, quanti tormenti, quanto mesti sospiri, e quanta speme ci conduci ai suavi bracimenti. Mio superbo guerrier, she starts saying, because she admires the strength and the power and the willingness of Otello. Quanti tormenti, quanti mesti sospiri, because she, as the wife of Otello, understands the man behind il guerriero, behind that conquistatore. She understands the man, so she's talking to that soul that she loves. Via abbracciamenti, I hold you, I embrace you. Oh, come dolce il murmurare insieme, teneramente, with, the score says, come una voce lontana. Because I was telling you that neither is Otello showing off his powerful voice the same way Desdemona is not showing off her powerful soprano voice. They are having this very intimate duet where words are so important that now she's telling us, quando narravi l'esule tua vita e i fieri e i venti e i lunghi tuoi dolor, ed io tu dia con l'anima rapita in quei spaventi. When you narrated me all those brave, tremendous adventures, those tremendous battles, and your pain, because she says, "E lunghi tuoi dolor," because she knows that Otello suffered. Ed io tu dia con l'anima rapita. And I used to listen to you. I heard what you were sharing me. And you stole my soul with all those words, with all those things that you were narrating, with all those things that you were telling me, because my heart was in such ecstasies when I heard your words. Otello replies, Pingea dell'armi il fremito, la pugna e il volgagliardo alla breccia mortal, l'assalto orribile ed era, con l'ugna al baluardo e sibilante stral. Poi mi guidavi al fulgi diserti, all'arse arene, al tuo materno sol, replies Desdemona. You are transporting me to those lands, to that desert, to that sand and the lands of yours. Narravi allor gli spasimi sofferti e le catene e dello schiavo il duol. Ingentilitia di lacrime la storia e il tuo bel viso. Otello, commosso, understanding the words of Desdemona, so full of words, so full of love, understanding how carried away she is by the pains and the stories of Otello, he continues, e il labbro di sospir scendean sulle mie tenebre, la gloria, il paradiso e gli astri benedir. Because that light of yours descended on my tenebre and my darkness, that glory, il paradiso, paradise, and all those the astria benedir. And Desdemona replies, ed io vedea fra le tue tempi oscure. At this point, if you are aware of how the opera goes, you are aware that the voice of the Desdemona is at this point so fragile. Ed io vedea fra le tempi oscure splendere del genio, l'eterea beltà. And Otello replies, e tu m'amavi per le mie sventure, e tu m'amavi per le mie sventure, ed io t'amavo per la tua pietà, ed io t'amavo per le tue sventure, e tu m'amavi per la mia pietà. And with this exchange of phrases, and I love you because of those griefness of yours, and you loved me per la mia pietà, for that piety that I have in my heart. They understand each other, they share what they love about each other, and wrap up the duet, still insisting, ed io t'amavo per la tua pietà, e mi colga nell'estasi di questo amplesso il momento, su temo che più non mi sarà concesso quest'attimo divino, ignoto avvenir del mio destino. Desdemona replies, disperde il cieli affani, amar non muti col mutar degli anni. replies Otello. Ah, questa tua preghiera, amen risponda la celeste schiera. And Desdemona replies, amen ti risponda. Otello, ah, la gioia m'inonda sì fieramente. Still not with any exaggeration. It is not la gioia m'inonda sì fieramente. It is not that. It is, on the contrary, very still, very quiet, very calm, very intimate. Ah, la gioia m'inonda sì fieramente che ansante mi piaccio. And now, a very important phrase. Un bacio. Otello requesting a kiss from Desdemona, and Desdemona replying, Otello, and Otello insists, un bacio, ancora un bacio, still insisting and requesting, please leave me, give me a kiss. Già la Pleiade ardente in mar discende. And Desdemona replies, tarda è la notte. Now that the night, as Desdemona says, tarda è la notte, Otello insists, Vien, Veneris, splendor. It is a very interesting way of wrapping up this duet, because it has splendor with an A. Desdemona joins much later in that note and singing just an F, 2 notes lower than Otello. Otello! Someone saying Otello, and the other saying splendor. They join their voices, they wrap up this absolutely beautiful duet, and there is these notes, these chords by Maestro Otello, and the end of Act 1 catches us. One has the sensation of having witnessed the perfection and the expression of extreme beauty and love. And that's what Otello and Desdemona have at the end of Act 1. And it is now time for us to talk about, in this Act 2, about the true evil that is Iago. Iago has this unfrequent talent of understanding the weakness of Otello, and he is going to use these weaknesses of Otello, this jealousy of Otello, to end up destroying him. But in the way of destroying Otello, he also destroys Desdemona, and in a way he destroys himself. And to understand that, there is this aria that Maestro Verdi built for Iago, usually called as the Credo, that starts by saying, Credo in un Dio crudele, che m'ha creato simili a sé, e che nell'ira io nomo. Credo in un Dio crudele, che m'ha creato simili a sé, e che nell'ira io nomo. With those terrible words, credo in un Dio crudel, Iago says, I believe in a cruel God who created me similar to what he is. And that this anger that que en el ira yo nomo, I call his name. That's how Iago starts his opening aria, which is tremendous. That, of course, great baritones have sung it in the past. Horrible words. He sings, Dalla viltà d'un germe, I am as vile as a germ. O d'un atomo vile sonnato, or as an atom. They already knew that word, the atom. To the smallness of his existence, he was born vile, vile sonnato, son scelerato, perché son uomo e sento il fango originario in me, because I was born a man and I feel all that fango originario in me, making reference, to the Christian belief that we were built from mud. So he says, I am a man, created a man from mud, and I still feel that mud that is part of me. Sì, questa è la mia fe. Yes, that is my faith. Of course, if you have heard this aria, you're familiar with it, you understand that, and you know that the orchestration by Maestro Verdi is so dark and heavy. Credo confermo cuor, sì come crede la verve nel tempio, che il mal ch'io penso e che da me procede per mio destino adempio. Credo confermo cuor, I believe with all my heart, sì come credo la vedova al tempio, che il mal che io penso che da me procede, because I think that all that evil that I think and that is born in me per mio destino adempio. Talking about how all your evilness will end up reaching you. Credo che il giusto è un istrion beffardo e nel viso e nel cuor che il toto è noi bugiardo, lagrima, bacio, sguardo, sacrificio ed onor. E credo l'uom gioco iniqua sorte dal germe della cola al verme della bel. Every time he says credo, 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 this is the third time he repeats and shares with us what he actually believes. Viendo potente visión la morte, e poi, la morte il nulla, death is nothing. E vecchia fola il ciel. He wraps up his aria, but he's also reminding us, Cassio, a te questo è il momento, because Cassio is an obstacle to reaching his goal. He has to destroy Cassio. He will end up destroying Desdemona, and as I was telling you, he will end up destroying Otello himself. So he says, ma il caso in mio favor s'adopra, eccolo, al posto, all'opera. And that is because he has to build a believable story so that he can convince and starts digging into the jealousy of Otello. So he has to make him believe that Desdemona is in love, that is having love affairs with Cassio, Cassio, the right hand of Otello, what better way to destroy a man than making him doubt of his own wife and making him doubt of his most loved friend and right hand? Iago understands that and builds this story around the handkerchief that will be repeated throughout the remaining of the opera as a proof of the treason of Desdemona. And Cassio will start telling his story in a duet with Otello, also a very well-known duet because it is very impressive and powerful. He's starting, Era la notte, Cassio dormia. At this point, I also have to mention that Iago has to be not only a great singer, but also a great actor himself. The moment you see Iago, you really have to believe that he's evil himself. So with the intention, he says, Era la notte, Cassio dormia, gli stavo accanto, con interrotte voci tradia l'intimo incanto, le labbra lente movene l'abbandono del sogno ardente. Because Iago is telling a story to Otello that he caught Cassio in sleep while he was dreaming. Cassio was dreaming and was dreaming of Desdemona, because he says that Cassio in his dream says, Desdemona soave, il nostro amor s'ascolta, cautivelliamo l'estasi del ciel, tutto m'inonda. Of course, all of those are fake, are false words by Iago. He's making all that up. But it doesn't matter, because he has to lie to make Otello believe that Cassio dreams about her lover Desdemona. Iago keeps telling the story about those dreams and about that relationship until they talk about il fazzoletto. Il fazzoletto is that handkerchief that I was telling you just a moment ago. That fazzoletto is the one that will reveal the treason to Otello. And I have been mispronouncing it, sorry. It is not faccio, it is fazzoletto. Il fazzoletto che io le diedi, pegno primo d'amor. Quel fazzoletto ieri, that handkerchief, yesterday, I am sure, I saw in man di Cassio. And when he says, I saw in man di Cassio, that symbol of love and loyalty of Desdemona, the one that handkerchief that he gave to Desdemona, is now in the hands of Cassio. So Otello, in an eruption of anger, says, mille vite li donasse Dio, ne povera preda al furarmi Dio mio, giago il cor di gelo, longi da me le pietose larve, tutto il mondo vano amore sano il cielo, guardami e sparve. And says, nelle suo spire sangue l'idra mi avvince, and says, sangue, 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 yelling blood, blood, blood. He wants the blood of Desdemona and Cassio. Si pel ciel marmoreo gioro, per le torte folgori, per la morte, per lo scolo, terminator, impietor tremendo. And that's how it starts, because I have to picture that Otello is losing his temper, is out of his mind when he says sangue, sangue, sangue. Instead of love, now he wants the blood of his best friend Cassio and his wife Desdemona, because I swear to God, si per ciel marmorio giuro. Of course, as Otello is in this eruption of angerness, Iago is enjoying this. Non valsate ancor testimone il sol ch'io miro, che mi radia in anima l'ampia terra il vasto sospiro del creato inter. So while Iago is enjoying the scene and still playing with the emotions of Otello, they join their voices once again for Si per ciel marmorio giuro, per la forte folgori, per la morte, per l'oscuro. And this goes for quite some time still, when they end each one with a phrase. Otello says, Dio vendicator, asking for the help of God to give him his help to end up with the life of Desdemona and Cassio, and Iago joining also, so very happy, says, Dio vendicator, enjoying how that God will help Iago to accomplish the destruction of Cassio, Desdemona, and Otello himself. And that's how, with this powerful duet, the second act ends. Throughout the next scenes, we'll be witnessing how Desdemona is mistreated by Otello, doubting the love she has for him, doubting of Cassio, while she's trying to intercede for Cassio. The more she intercedes for Cassio, I didn't mention that, but Cassio has been questioned by Otello. It was in fact something that Iago built to discredit Cassio, and that's why Desdemona is insisting of and interceding for Cassio. But that only makes Otello more angry. And there is a duet, a long scene in the third act, where there is nothing but humiliation towards Desdemona. If you still think or feel you're a human, one cannot feel anything but sadness around what we are witnessing around Desdemona. Desdemona cannot understand why Otello is yelling, why he's upset, why he's mistreating, why he's so vile with her. All she understands is that she still has love for him. But now Otello seems to be a very different man. She knows that, of course, being him a guerriero, of course, she knows he has this strong character, but never against her, never mistreating her like that. There is a moment in time, it depends on the performance, you see, that even that Otello even throws her to the floor and humiliates Desdemona to the eyes of everybody. While, of course, Iago is still enjoying that part, and Otello keeps descending to the darkness part of his soul. At this point, the only triumph is in the hands of Iago. Even the promotion, the request of the governor for Otello to join him is not well received, because he has been instructed to pass the power of the island of Chipre to Cassio, which of course Iago does not like. But despite or never mind the political things that are going on around the power that Iago is willing to have, that Otello has at this point, and that he has to pass to Cassio, despite not agreeing with that, it really doesn't matter, because at this point there is only destruction and the angerness all over the place. At this point, Desdemona is destroyed. Her feelings for Otello have not changed. She still loves Otello, but there seems to be no love in the eyes of Otello. There is only anger, there is only hatred in the eyes of Otello. And with that in mind, we reach, that is the very tough third act, that is just of such a level of perfection that Maestro Verdi wrote, that we need to reach, or we are approaching the end of the opera. The end of the opera has a masterpiece of music being composed for the voice of Desdemona. She will not, you will learn that soon if you don't know the plot still. She will not leave us without sharing with us a little more about the beautiful soul she has. At the final act, there is this very dark, sad music. Those very the notes that Verdi wrote and that really touch your heart. There is very little dark. There is more than anything. There is darkness on the stage, and there you see Desdemona in the bedroom asking. We haven't mentioned about the role, the supporting role, the woman that helps Desdemona, and that is called Emilia. She will ask Emilia to take the dress, the dress that she married to, that she wore when she married to Otello. She asked her to put it on the bed. She would like to wear it, to see it and wear it for one more last time, because at this point Desdemona really thinks that this is the last night she will be alive. At some point it is like a presentimento. She feels she will be killed that night. They call it the Willow Song, usually followed, or not usually, and followed by the Ave Maria by Desdemona. And she tells a very lovely, still very sad story that starts like: Mia madre aveva una povera ancella, innamorata e bella, era il suo nome Barbara. Amava un uomo che poi l'abbandonò. Cantava una canzone, la canzone del sale c'è. Mi dici le chiome, io questa sera ho la memoria piena di quella cantinella. Piange cantando nell'ermananza, piangeva la mesta. O salce, 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 sede acchinando sorse la testa. Salce, salce, salce. Cantiamo, cantiamo, il sale
dolce funebre sarà la mia ghirlanda. Affrettati, fra poco giunge Otello. Scorreano i rivi, fra le sole in fior, geme a quel cuore affranto, e la ciglia le scorgava il cor, l'amara onda del pianto. Salce, salce, salce. Cantiamo, cantiamo, il salce funebre sarà la mia ghirlanda. Scende angeli voli dei rami cupi verso quel dolce canto, e gli occhi suoi piangean tanto, tanto, dai piedi torsir le rupi. Ripoli questo anello. Povera Barbara, sole alla storia con questo semplice suono finir. Egli era nato per la sua gloria, io per amar. Ascolta, o giuramento, taci, chi batte quella porta? Io per amarlo e per morir. Cantiamo, cantiamo, salce, salce, salce. Emilia, Dio, come merdo le ciglia, e presagio di pianto. Buonanotte.
And then, in a terrible shout of desperation, ah, Emilia, Emilia, Dio, Emilia, Dio. Those would be the last words he would say to Emilia. He would continue with the Ave Maria, a very lovely Ave Maria that many consummate sopranos like to sing. Nell'ora della morte, it says, Ave Maria, piena di grazia, eletta fra le sposi e le vergini sei tu, sia benedetto il frutto, o benedetta di tue materne viscere, Gesù. Prega per chi adorando a ti si prostra, prega per il peccator, per l'innocente. And that final preghiera, that Ave Maria, will be almost the final words by Desdemona, because soon Otello will join her commoso for a second for seeing Desdemona in the wedding dress that they had, but just for a fraction of a second, because he is still very upset and being guided by Iago that Desdemona cannot see a next day. Desdemona will be killed in the hands of her own husband. And please let me make a small pause here in the plot and the music to share you my thoughts. The last time I had the opportunity of seeing this live at the Palacio de Bellas Artes, I was telling myself, and it is not only because there is around the world this movement around the protection of women, and I was asking myself if we are not, as unfortunately the newspapers recently all over the world, is it that when we see Otello killing his own wife, if we are not watching a feminicide on the stage? Unfortunately, there are many cases of women who remain by the side of their lovers or their husbands, and they remain by the side by the side of the men who will end up killing them. I wish this was only a story. I wish it was only a plot by Shakespeare and with the music of Verdi. But it is true that it is happening many times around the world. And how important should the story be different? Should not Otello be told that way? That Desdemona, seeing herself in danger, never accepted to be alone with Otello again. Because by deciding to be alone with him that last night is how he finishes up her life. Story could have been told differently, but this is how it actually ends up. Otello kills Desdemona at the end, in the very last seconds, very last minutes of the opera. It is discovered that everything was a plot by Iago, but it is already very late because Desdemona has been killed injustamente, and now Otello decides to kill himself, now learning that he has killed the love of his life for a number of lies, lies that he chose to believe. He cannot live any longer knowing that he killed the love of his life. And then there is this phrase or these words that we have learned before when he says, niun mi tema, se ancora armato mi vede, ecco la fine del mio cammin, oh gloria, Otello fu. E tu come sei pallida, talking to Desdemona, in the paleness of death, e stanca e muta, e bella, pia creatura, nata sulla maligna stella, fredda, cold, come la casta tua vita in cielo, la sorta. Ah, morta, morta, morta. Morta, he has killed Desdemona. And so, stabbing himself, Otello has decided to end with his own life. He has killed Desdemona, and now all the life is over for him. This is how this splendid opera by Maestro Giuseppe Verdi ends up. Thank you very much for having shared another episode of Parlons. This time we talked about Otello. Nous avons eu Parlons d'Otello, and hope to see you some other time soon.